Hello. How's everybody doing? How's life? How's things? How's the universe? How has your week been? Hello. And we're live. Yes, hello everybody. How is everybody doing? I'm gonna close this before I get the email. Hello, John. I mean, you said you're sitting in the dark here, so gonna be late later. So if you're not here, I guess I can't say hello. But if you are here, hello. How you doing? How's things? I'm also somewhat sitting in the dark thanks to this. This is my old technically it's my second Nanoleaf Shapes controller. Those lights in the wall. Yeah, this is the second one. I don't know where the other one went. Probably on my desk somewhere. Meh. This is the second. This is the replacement one. It's dead too. Yeah. I tried to go through the same automated replacement service, but they said no. So I contacted their tech support, and they said we need proof of purchase. And I said, well, they were actually a press sample. I can find the email from your press team that offered me them. And then they very quickly shipped me a new one. I am hoping that the standard non-tech reviewer kind of pressed the treatment, that's it, is the same. But yeah, I cannot recommend Shapes controllers like the Shapes lights anymore because this is a tragedy. I mean, this is the second controller that's died in under 2 years. I think this one is maybe like 6 months old at most. And like, it's not like I use them every day. These basically only turn on once a week for this stream. And they can't do that. So yeah, I did try and crack it open, but they have done something incredible. Like, it must just be glued shut, basically. So I probably will destructively open it to see what's wrong, and possibly see if I can reverse engineer anything. But yeah, fun times. Hello Joe, how you doing, man? Hello Chris, hello Luca, and hello Just Jets. How you guys doing? Saw the Nanoleaf controller issue. I've seen a few people struggle with them too. Yeah, I'm not that surprised. Although what I'm more confused about is the actual connection method is these 3 pins, one of which is, I think, 42 volts, one of which is ground, so the middle one is data. But that doesn't really make sense. There aren't many one-wire data protocols, especially one wire that can tell which panel is like connected to where. I'm guessing that the panels themselves do have basically tiny microcontrollers in them that know which of the connectors are connected to, and then they each have their own independent ID, and so as long as it can tell the controller, hey, this is like what, you know, where things are, that makes sense. 42 volts sounds a lot. It is and it isn't, because my guess is that they're running all of the panels. I guess they're probably running the panels in parallel, but the LEDs will all be run in series, and I think we worked out that there's 3 LEDs per panel. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to rip it apart and see. Hello, John Paul Bacon. How you doing? Hello, Simon. How you doing? Hello, Butchie Bench. How you going? How are you doing? And hello, Harry as well. Got the car dynoed. Got 260 horsepower. Nice. Nice. That is definitely respectable, especially in a S1. Like in a smaller, lighter car than say mine. And 280 newton meters. Nice. Mine should be 330 horsepower and 440 newton meters, but I haven't dynoed it. Tomato ketchup, tomato sauce, or brown sauce with my fish and chips. Well, you seem like the sort of person who likes weird things, so brown sauce. Migrated my cPanel host, but WordPress is so slow. Yeah, I kind of hate WordPress. It's a love-hate relationship. Mostly hate. John, how you been? I just put my deposit on an MTO7. Nice! Enjoy! Enjoy! Joe says, my daughter's fella's got rid of his WRX and got himself an RS4 Avant. Nice! I don't know why you wouldn't have got an S4, but okay. No, fair. Nice. Hope he enjoys. Hello, Yenna the user. How you doing, man? How's things? M3 Touring, am I right? Well, yes and no. I don't like the interior. Well, I don't really like BMW as a company, for one. That's like strike one. Strike two, I don't really like their interiors. I don't know what it is, but it just feels like the dashboard is a brick that wants to chop your knees off. Just doesn't not quite for me. I've driven a few BMWs, including the i4 M50, the EV, and an M4. In fact, I've tracked an M4, and you know they're great cars mechanically, although they do leak oil a lot. Ask me how I know. I fixed one a lot. Check out this channel for more details. But yeah, I don't know. I like my S4. Any thoughts on how the Vcache versions of AMD AM5 chips will perform? So I mean, the general sort of consensus essentially is that they're likely to perform considerably better. The fact that the standard non-Vcache chips are pretty close to the 5800X3D does mean that the performance of the Vcache version should be even better. I would suspect that would be great for gaming performance. Obviously, I couldn't tell you any exact numbers, and realistically, it doesn't matter that much anyway. But yeah. So Daniel Lopez says, people who said I'm waiting for 3D Vcache are now saying it's too expensive and I'll wait for Zen 5. I mean, yes. But that's always how it goes. It's always, I'll wait for the next, oh, that's too expensive, I'll wait for the next thing. The pricing looks fairly like standard to me. Obviously, the fact that the standard chips, the non 3D Vcache chips, have been out for a little while and have come down in price will likely mean that the launch price discrepancy between, you know, the 17900X3D and the 17900X is going to be pretty massive, and we'll kind of need for them to come down a bit. But looking at the 5800X3D that's still in stock, you can still buy it new. It's obviously technically a current generation part for all intents and purposes until the 7th gen chips actually come out. But the 5800X3D and the 7800X3D are fairly similar. It might be like between £20 and £50 more expensive to go for the 7800X3D instead. So again, I would probably call that even. Are you gaming? I've got an update on my monitor issue. I tried an HDMI connection, and when I enable VRR, the crashes appeared at the same spots, but much more reliably. I would hazard a guess that that's because HDMI was an afterthought for NVIDIA for their G-Sync module. If you happen to have existed in the tech world long enough, you'll know that the first versions of G-Sync only came with DisplayPort. In fact, they often only had a single DisplayPort input, and that was it. You could not connect anything other than an NVIDIA graphics card and a single, NVIDIA graphics card, basically, to that. What you call it? Come on, brain. Point. I wish I had a brain. Right. The original versions of G-Sync could only connect a single display input. They only had a single DisplayPort ports. And so when they finally, and when I say finally, I mean it was quite late on, finally added HDMI, that was even like later, and it was only a standard input. It wasn't G-Sync compatible. It was only like legitimately a couple of years ago that they started offering variable refresh like G-Sync over HDMI, and for G-Sync Ultimate I'm still not entirely sure they wholly support it over HDMI instead. So that would probably explain why the intermittency is even worse. Does it sound like an E63? Nice. Probably not, to be honest. They tend to be a bit more rowdy. I guess 42 volts means lower amps, so better for heat and efficiency. Yes, but the LEDs can only be driven at a certain voltage, although realistically there's probably an LED driver board on board, and so it's probably the driver board that's being driven at 42 volts, and then the actual LEDs will be, if there is only 3 LED, it depends what which LED chip, but they're only a couple of volts each basically. I don't like BMW as well, and in Romania they get a bad rap for being obnoxious drivers. It's not just in Romania, mate. Trust me, it's everywhere. Joe, I agree with you. Paul from Not an Apple Fan made a valid SKU observation. AMD should shift stacks. So the R3 is a 6 core, the R5 is an 8 core, the R7 is a 12 core, and the R9 is a 16 core. That would be nice. I would hazard a guess that they then wouldn't want to compete, like they wouldn't want to I mean, it might work in their favor actually. Isn't that what they did with well, technically that's what they did with the FX, but then isn't that what they also did with the like first gen Ryzen? Is that at the time Intel was offering 6 cores on the top end. Was it even quad core still? I can't remember the generation. It might have been quad core actually. And AMD was offering, well, 8. Yeah, 7th gen. 7700K was quad core. And then it was the 8700K was 6. The 9900K was 10, which was i9. And then back to 8. I have one of those monitor and ASUS thingy. It's years old. 10 panel 2560 by 4040 140 Hz. Yes, nice. The first G-Sync monitor was an ASUS one, and it was I think it was 1080p. Must have been 144 Hz. I don't get why HDMI was the thing. Others precede it and are better than it. Then LTT do a vid praising it when all the points say DisplayPort is better and not licensed. Yeah. I don't really. I mean, I think it's one of those. Technically speaking, DisplayPort is better, and in fact, I do genuinely agree DisplayPort is better. If I can use DisplayPort, then I prefer to do that. Obviously, HDMI ended up being the standard choice for multimedia. I think I have to assume in part because it's a slightly less bulky design and slightly more user-friendly in the fact that there's no locks or anything on the cables. And so I think that felt a bit more, new age compared to the other types of connectors that you would have to, like DVI and VGA, where you have to use two screw terminals to screw them in. Whereas, if you think of SCART and S-Video or composite video, all of those are relatively similar to HDMI in their sort of use case, so maybe. But who knows? Well, probably quite a few people know, actually. I'm not one of them, but yeah. Speaking of monitors, 1080p high refresh rate is ideal for me, so my system ages as gracefully as possible with the current specs. Nice, fair. Makes sense. Well, a few weeks of home automation upgrades at my mate's house. Now hardware complete, going through the software setup stage. Smells different from the old system. Nice. Do you think a lower end model of the Zen 4 3D Vcache should be a better choice than a higher end non-Vcache Zen 4? So it depends what you're doing. If you're talking about gaming, I have to assume the answer is yes. If you're talking about productivity things that will make use of 12 or 16 cores, then arguably no, because the out and out performance generally isn't that much better. A lot of compute heavy apps, like rendering, whatever, I don't think are as cache restricted as gaming is. So as a general consensus, I would say more cores more better rather than more cache more better. But for gaming, I would say definitely yes. 8700K was rushed out soon after. Yes, I suppose as a bit of a response to Ryzen, if I remember. Do you die if you get thermal paste in your mouth? Because I'm scared I do that when building my first PC. Oh, nice. I am happy to report that it is not a fatal, poisonous dose. I mean, it can't be that good for you, like to just drink an entire tube. But no, you're not going to die from it. I didn't realize the octa-core 1900K my server was 10 core. Was it not 10 core? Which one was? No, it was 10th gen that was 10 core. That was it. My mistake. It went 8, and then the 10 900K was 10 core, and then the 11 900K went back to 8. That's it. Thank you for reminding me. You best put the paste on the CPU in your mouth. Yeah, it's probably a good idea. And ISO alcohol is your friend for removing thermal paste from the skin. Well, I wouldn't necessarily recommend drinking the thermal paste and then drinking isopropyl alcohol. I feel like that might be closer to a death sentence. Yeah. Liquid metal. Ooh, that's an interesting one. It's not mercury though. That one would be deadly, but they wouldn't sell you liquid mercury as a thermal paste. So, the 10850K is also 10 cores. Yes, that's the one that I have of the 10th gen. I bought a 10850K to do benchmarks with. It was an Asus PG278Q and only had one DisplayPort port. Yes, I actually had one of those for a bit. I've got the PG279 upstairs, which I used to use as my main monitor until I replaced it with an Aorus one that has a backlight section dying. Yeah. But yes, I remember that. I reviewed one. Long time ago. But the lock could be handier for a heavier cable plugged into a telly. HDMI cables can be pretty beefy and friction is not always handy. I'm not saying that the lock isn't useful. I do actually like that feature of DisplayPort. However, I'm presupposing that from a systems architecture perspective, if you have to pick, if say Sony is going to pick a new port to put on not only their TVs but their games consoles and their Blu-ray players and their etc. etc. I think the idea of a friction-free type of connector and cable, I think, would be one of the determining factors for them. But like I said, speculation. All Dell's new DisplayPort cables don't have locks. So the funny thing is, I actually use a couple of DisplayPort cables that don't have locks, and I don't miss it. But technically speaking, I like the function of the lock being there. Practically speaking, I'm not quite as bothered. Like I've not had DisplayPort connections fall out or whatever, but even with moving my monitors around, they're perfectly fine. So I don't know. Interesting comment. Just had to restart my phone because it crashed loading settings trying to change Wi-Fi networks. Nice. Oh yeah. This isn't the only thing that failed today or this week. I have another hard drive here. It's an Iron Wolf NAS drive. Yeah. So I have two NASs. I have Overkill, which is my work NAS. It's the Threadripper NAS, which is what I work off of. It's got 10 gig NIC. It has a couple of virtual machines. It's what runs my Home Assistant installation, Pi-hole, and a few other VMs and services and stuff, and my WireGuard server actually. But one of the interesting things is that the other NAS I have is a pretty old QNAP one now. That's a quad bay NAS, and it's what I run my Plex server off of, and have sort of my personal backups and that sort of thing, and where I back up my PC to. I've had a few drives fail or break on me, so I keep a backup of my system. I don't keep much on my system anymore. It's all on NASs, which gives it at least a bit of redundancy, even if I don't necessarily have backups of everything completely. But I've got copies of kind of bits of everything everywhere, and one of the drives in the QNAP NAS, the 4 bay, which is populated with four terabyte drives. One of them is technically, it's not failing; it is still functioning perfectly fine. But its bad block and bad sector counts are through the roof, so it's time to replace it. I've made a copy of all of the pertinent data just in case rebuilding the array ends up killing one of the other drives. So I still have copies of the data. And the other thing that I'm in the process of planning is a better backup solution, so that I actually have multiple copies of the data I kind of need. I was planning on using some form of cloud storage solution. I would love to use Backblaze, their personal cloud, which technically is unlimited, but you can't use it on network drives. It has to be your local machine. And there is someone who's made an Unraid plugin that basically runs the Backblaze personal backup utility as in Wine, so it makes it think that your local arrays or your local shared folders, whatever, are actually local folders, and then it will upload it. But when I'm talking about sort of business sensitive data, I don't necessarily want to be playing chicken with terms of service. So then I was thinking about, okay, well, they've got a NAS backup solution, but that's $5 per terabyte per month, which is a lot for the 22 terabytes of data I have. Or there's, you know, like I could put it in AWS, like their S3 Glacier deep archive set. So that would only be about $20 a month in storage fees, which is fine, manageable. But if I ever wanted to recover that data, it would cost over $1,000 in transaction fees, like data transfer fees, which for that sort of price, I'm just going to build another NAS and give it to a friend and have remote backups. Literally cheaper. And I don't have to have any ongoing costs, which is something that I don't really like. I don't like adding subscriptions and things, especially essential subscriptions like AWS. And you know, a backup solution, it's another thing that I definitely have to have the money for every month. And with the sort of uncertainty of being a YouTuber and a self-employed idiot, while I generally, you know, making enough to have ends meet, as it were, having as low sort of requirement levels as possible is better. My 3 terabyte drive has 40 bad sectors. It's time for replacement. I would definitely have a copy of whatever data's on it, yes. But as long as you do have a copy of the data that's on it, nah, keep going until the smart warnings tell you it's screwed. That is one of the nice things about like hard drives compared to SSDs, is that hard drives, not always, but in my experience, the majority of hard drives I've had have failed with plenty of errors. They've gone, I might be having a problem, and then they give you enough time to get all the data off of them. Whereas they, with SSDs, they tend to just be perfectly fine 1 minute and completely dead the next minute. So yeah. Well, so Joe, there are plenty of large scale, like large size SSDs that I technically could use, right? The problem is just cost. Like a 14 terabyte hard drive is about £250 right now. A 14 terabyte SSD is thousands. And they're not going to come down in price relatively. Like the hard drives are kind of at sort of almost rock bottom prices anyway, but you know, they're sort of at their price. But SSDs, like, they're not going to come down to parity anytime soon. So yeah. Could you review the AW2521HF monitor, please? I would love to, but the last time that I asked Dell/Alienware for a monitor, they said they'd send me one, and then they didn't, and then they said, where's our review? And I said, you haven't sent it to me, and they said, yes, we have, and I said, no, you haven't, and then they ghosted me. So ish, yes, that's kind of the plan. I mean, not my parents, but yes. Oh yes, the other user, Porsche 911 Dakar. Looks cool. It's one of those, like, you know, it's a limited run. It's you have to be ultra wealthy already to afford one, let alone actually get your hands on one. Um, it you know it's cool, but also I don't know. I'm feeling a little disillusioned with the uh, very flash car scene. Although I do feel like it has more, you might say, heritage than the Lamborghini version. I can't remember what the name is. The Huracan with some off-road tires and a wing kit. Yeah. My server has, I guess, 130 terabytes. I have a backup server that holds about 50 terabytes, so only back up some things. Yeah, that's fair. My intention is to technically over provision the backup server slightly, such that as I end up using more and more space on this NAS, I don't necessarily have to think about the backup server anytime soon. Technically speaking, it's sort of not over provisioned if you include my sort of personal NAS. Because I've got 40 terabytes of usable space currently in my Overkill NAS, and then another 24 terabytes or whatever of usable in the QNAP one. So the backup server, I think I'm going to go with 4 14 terabyte drives, which with one, you know, for parity, will be what you call it? 42 terabytes, I think, of usable. Well, after formatting, more like 40, but still. So yeah, it'll do. I'm thinking of using TrueNAS for the backup one. I use it on RAID at the moment, but I've heard a lot of good things about TrueNAS, so try. 14 terabyte, 144 pounds on Hucked ATM. I assume that's a shucked drive then. By the way, Samsung's 15 terabyte SSD is 10K. Oops, there goes the Nanoleaf. Damn. Spenny. Although saying that, I did an SSD review for Sabrent, the Rocket 4 Plus G, the new gaming, like, direct storage specific one, and it is, what you call it? Come on, brain. I wish my brain would cooperate with me. What was I saying? Doing a Sabrent SSD review, and I was looking at some other reviews, and it the review included a comparison to an Intel Optane drive. The Optane drive is $4,000 for a 500 gig drive. And the Sabrent one is just as fast, and it's 2 terabytes, and it's $300. Hot UK deals, right. It's WD external, you can shuck it, it's a WD white label helium. Fair. I mean, for that kind of price, I'd consider buying a couple extra and then using dual parity instead, and then that feel like that kind of measures my risk a little, but fair. I know that for some of the drives, for some of like WD and possibly Seagate, their external drives, they've actually replaced the PCB that's on the drive with the USB controller, so there's no SATA port, there's no like daughter board that connects, it's just the hard drive and the USB port, which I always find really annoying. WD, that's 2.5 inch. Oh, okay. I'm pretty sure I've seen a 3.5 inch one with it as well, though. Maybe it was the Seagate one then. I don't remember, but I've definitely seen a 3.5 inch drive with USB, like only a USB port on the exterior rather than SATA port. But it might have also been a smaller drive, like 2 or 4 terabytes as well. But fair. I shall have a look after the stream. Oh yeah, the new system put in Mate's place has 4 10 terabyte enterprise NVMe drives in it. They're 2,000 Australian dollars plus each. Yeah, that sounds a bit right. That's kind of insane. Like 40 terabytes of NVMe, like enterprise NVMe drives. Why? I got a CCTV system coming tomorrow that I'll be installing over the weekend. Nearly ready to get the workshop working in the workshop, so it'll come in handy once I'm in there. Nice. What CCTV system do you have? Did you get? And essentially, it's just my totally legal Blu-ray rips. Fair enough. Yeah, no, that's understandable. Oh, and yeah, the user. If you live in Romania and want a Porsche, that's your best bet. It's good for our roads. Fair play. Nothing too special. It's an 8-channel DVR kit. Okay, fair. They're programming it 12 terabytes to run the life support equipment, and it's mirrored. Right. Okay. So it's in RAID 10. Because that's RAID 0. 2 sets of RAID 0, RAID 1. Which technically gives you a copy. But I'm never... I don't know, I don't like RAID 0 for anything critical. I'm sure it's probably fine, but... Well, actually, on enterprise NVMe drives, I'd have a bit more confidence in it. So, fair play. Oh, I've been doing some more tinkering, as always. And I bought some audio jacks, so more breadboard testing. I had to solder the audio jack, the 4-pole jack there, up on stilts because it wouldn't fit in my my breadboard. But I've been working out how to capture audio. Well, I say capture audio, capture being able to trigger the input lag test on a mouse click. So yeah. No worries, yeah, no user. Hope you have a good week. Stay safe. And yeah, I've finally, well, I say finally, I've successfully made it work. So I'm hoping to do a more latency specific tool. Depending on how I do it, technically it might be able to do response times as well, but I'm gonna go with let's build it solo. minimum viable product and all. But yeah, instead of the doing the 5 footed ads on the bottom and the complicated gain system, it'll just be a fixed gain, a fixed op amp. I'm debating. So the initial design of the Pro unit had double op amps, or a 2-in-1 op amp chip. So the one chip had 2 operational amplifiers in it, but I ended up not needing the second one. So what I'm considering doing is still using that same chip, but use the other one for the audio input, and then I want to have a couple of jumper pins so that you can like give it a signal as an input start as well. Yeah, and a button on it as always. I didn't build it. The company that did the work spec'd it and supplied it. Time to get ready to go for the 4-letter word. Work. Or... Nice. Enjoy. But yeah, so I'm excited to build another thing. I'm thinking about also sort of forking the code that I have so that I can have a slightly redesigned and simpler tool, and ideally I'd like the latency tool to be able to do in games like NVIDIA's LDAC can. That would be quite nice, rather than having to only use my application. Like, using my application will still give you better results, but for things like actual game testing, like if you want to be able to test what the latency is in a given game, or technically speaking, you could even use make it use like third-party systems. Like, you don't necessarily have to test on that system. So actually, one of the really cool things is that a fairly big movie studio, I think they're like a subsidiary of Sony, in California, like in Hollywood, bought an OSRTT Pro unit, and then they were emailing me asking about how they can integrate it into their sort of workflow, to be able to test the latency, because they're called Magnopus, like Magnum Opus, but Magnopus. And they're one of the people who use Unreal Engine and the sort of live stage type thing. So you can have your like actors, you've got the scene in the background, and the camera's tracked to the digital world. So as the camera moves, what's sort of projected or displayed on the live stage changes to follow the perspective of the camera, which is really cool. But what they want to be able to do is measure the latency between, you know, the director pushing a button to change a scene or to shine a light or to do whatever, for how long it goes from pressing that button to displaying that on the director's monitor. And technically speaking, that's not something that you could do right now with the standard OSRTT unit, which is why I basically need to add a mic jack so that you can put a mic next to the button, and then when you press the button, it makes enough sound to trigger the response time tool or the latency tool, and then that triggers it to start capturing samples, and then it looks for a light change or change in light level, and then can give you that data back. I did technically tell them that the Unreal Engine project that I've written thus far, and actually all of the code, is open source, and you're welcome to do as you please with it. But I've wanted to do a latency specific version for a little while, so this is a nice incentive too. In fact, I've said that line a couple of times this week. fact, one of the banes of my existence at the moment is Windows scaling. It's driving me up the wall, because it's not simple. Basically, it's breaking the aspect ratio of the fairly specifically set windows, and it's not scaling it right, which breaks it, which is a problem. Did you see the range test from CarWow? If they could get that sort of range on bigger cars, I'd be tempted by electric. One of your favorite cars is on it, the old Merc. I did watch that, and I also did note that he commented about the brakes on the Merc. Yeah. Yeah, so here's the thing. Of the 4 cars that they were testing, 2 of them were SUVs. Unsurprisingly, the 2 SUVs had the worst economy, like the worst efficiency, rather. Technically speaking, the Tesla did, what was it, third? Like 3 out of 4? Like third place. Which is a bit naff. But one of the reasons for that is because it was cold outside and they were using the climate control. To make it clear, I'm not apologizing for Tesla here, I'm actually roasting them. And the reason why is because, as far as I'm aware, all of the other cars have heat pumps to heat the car. If you don't know, a heat pump is the very same thing that your fridge uses to remove the heat from your house and put it outside, or from inside it to outside, or air conditioning that takes the heat from inside your house and poops it outside. Well, if you just reverse the flow so that the heat from the outside gets concentrated and blown into the car, you can have a pretty incredible efficiency, because instead of turning the energy stored in the battery straight into heat, right, which is a efficiency rating of 100%, because it's very easy to generate heat. Intel. But with a heat pump, instead of just using it as a resistive heater like Tesla does, you're using it to drive a compressor, which is then collecting heat from outside the car and drawing it in, and it gives you, in good conditions, over 300% efficiency. So for every 1 watt of energy you use from your battery, you get 3 watts of heating out of it. And you can use that to cool the battery too. You can use the battery as the source of the heat, which then keeps it cool, or you can use it in reverse and use it to heat the battery. It's fantastic. Anyway, Tesla has only just started implementing that in their newest, in fact, possibly not even currently sold yet, like built yet, Model Ys, and I assume Model 3 soon. So one of the reasons why the Tesla, despite having the best miles per kilowatt hour, had the worst overall, like the second worst range overall, is because they used so much of the energy blowing it on the heating the cars. And they didn't even, it was like 20 degrees, so like very, like honestly on the colder side. But yeah. The BMW kept going on though. Well, yes, but it also has a massive battery compared to the rest of them. The Merc is stunning inside. I do like it, just don't like the braking and the crawling at a snail's pace until it dies. It's hilarious. Well, so the braking, yes, it's horrendous, and I really hope they revise that for the next version. But the inside of it it's absolutely beautiful. You're in an S-Class, but even better because there's no engine, there's no exhaust, there's no whatever. There's no gear noises from the engine, and so it is beautifully stunning. The whole Hans Zimmer noises, not a fan, but it genuinely wafts across the road, and if you're just being driven around the motorway or whatever, I'm sure that is a phenomenal experience. I just wouldn't want to be the one driving at speed in it. Although the snail's pace, like crawling at a snail's pace until it dies, kind of makes sense. As Matt said in the video, it is a very Mercedes thing to do. And I do kind of like that compared to, you know, a lot of the other cars where they just conk out or whatever. Although admittedly, they all do give you pretty decent warnings. Like they tell you, you know, plenty of times, hey, get to a charger now, bro. Although I do prefer the ones that still let you put them in neutral so that you can push them to the charger where possible, or tow them to a charger comfortably, rather than having to charge them there and then. Or in Tesla's case, use a motorized flap and then that dies too. Gaming 113, correct. Yeah, it's a very Tesla thing to do, Joe. Actually, speaking of a very Tesla thing to do, Twitter. So Twitter has an API, an application programming interface. Basically, if you ever want to use Hootsuite or like any of the other third-party Twitter apps or websites, whatever, you need to use an API. It's basically a way for websites and various computers to talk to each other comfortably. So with a lot of big sites, you need to sign up for API keys, which is fine, and those keys often have like quota ratings, so you can't do too many requests, you know, per second, per minute, per day, whatever. For Amazon, that's one I'm quite familiar with because of Locally. So they have the product advertising API, which means that you have a set number of quota like requests you can do per day, depending on how many items you sell through your links. But they have there's a cap there, so if you request too many times, it'll just tell you, sorry, we can't handle this right now, chill out and come back to us. But Twitter has decided, I say Twitter, one man has decided that the APIs should be pay to play, and more specifically, they're limiting you to a maximum of 10,000 requests per month. Not second, not minute, month, for $2,500. That works out to 30 cents per request. Yeah, it's really dumb. Really dumb. So yeah, good job. Oh man, I kind of forgot electric cars would have drive-by-wire for everything, so no power, no brakes, no gears, etc. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what park actually does in an EV. Because with any sort of automatic, or in my case a DSG transmission, with an internal combustion engine, park is actually a physical thing in your gearbox where it's called the parking pole, and it's basically a little locker. It's a solenoid that engages in a gear to basically stop the transmission from spinning, as opposed to in neutral where that's not enabled but none of the gears are selected and so the transmission can spin freely. But in an electric car, you don't have a gearbox. You have a single speed reduction and a differential, which splits the power from rotating one way to two ways sideways, basically. But you don't have an actual transmission. Technically, the Porsche Taycan has a transmission in the rear, but it's an automated thing. So you don't have a parking pole in there, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know what park actually does for the car. I'd love to know. But yeah, if you have an electronic handbrake and that engages, yes, you need to disengage those. But the fun thing about electronic handbrakes is that they don't actually have sensors for like how close they are or whatever. All they do is just it's an electric motor that screws the caliper piston out, And all it does is it screws the caliper until the current on the motor starts spiking up, because once it's fully clamped, the motor can't do any more. It can't move freely, so it just starts drawing more and more current to try and squeeze it even harder. And then the controller goes, aha, the caliper must be locked, and then turns the motor off. So yeah, to undo an electric caliper, all you have to do is disconnect the plug and apply 12 volts in the right direction, and it'll just happily unscrew itself. So yeah. So if the caliper removed, it just runs and runs. Well, that's what I don't know. I have to assume that Park does something, but what that something is, I don't know. I mean, with enough battery, you could hypothetically say, well, it's they use a tiny bit of charge to keep the motor stationary, right? To sort of freeze the motor in place. Obviously, when the car's dead, they can't do that, so that can't necessarily be something they do all the time, if they even do it at all. But yeah, I don't know. Functionally, the car would be, well, technically it wouldn't be in neutral, it would be similar to leaving it in gear, because the electric motor, like regen braking is just the electric motors generating current by the same processes that use the current, but in reverse. And it's similar to engine braking in the sense that the motor itself has some inherent resistance, but a bit of resistance, that you'd have to overcome. Not as much as an internal combustion engine, technically, but still. Park is probably there so drivers coming from auto cars aren't confused. True. A lot of, I know it was quite, or probably still is, quite common in the States to only leave your car in park but not put the handbrake on, which seems insane here. Because the parking pawl is only designed to keep the gearbox stationary. It's not designed to lock the car in place. It can and does just shear off. The handbrake is what that's for. So yeah. Yeah. Does anyone have any last minute tech questions? In Italy, they leave the car in gear when parked. That's true. Especially if you live on a hill, it's good practice as well. Assuming it's a manual anyway. Most auto cars won't let you leave them in a gear. But park does fine. How's the AM5 slot looking? What? Every EV range video I've seen so far showcase charging problems, either not working, taken up, or not even in service. Yeah. That's kind of the thing, is that it is still quite early adopter. There are, like, the infrastructure is growing rapidly, it's fantastic. But, if everybody suddenly had EVs tomorrow, we'd be screwed. Well, yes and no, because, like, realistically, most people don't do long journeys, like long enough journeys to need to charge, like, on the journey. And it's not like petrol where you need to go and charge it at a public place. If you can charge it at home, that's how the vast majority of people who have EVs will use it. But yeah. Had a friend looking to build a PC, said AM5 is the way to go. What's your opinion on it? Is it the best, or should they go looking for Intel? Well, it depends how much your friend's looking to spend, but the new 3D Vcache chips, like the 7800X3D, should be pretty decent, so yeah. Hello, ZKD man, how's things? Charging stations in Australia are few and far between at the moment. Yes. I'm not that surprised. Best thing I found is charging at work. Nice, yeah. What's your favorite PC case? The Fantex Evolve X. Currently. Got a car back after months. Received a letter today saying I can officially order my next car now. It's been a Caddy Max and a Grand Torino, I think. Nice, fair. Sent her to the Discord. She was spending around 3k CD, Canadian dollars. First pick was leading her to the M4 slot. So I think it was a 5900X. If it's, what's the PC for? Also feel free to have her post in the build support chat. Yeah. And a lot more beer. If it's for gaming and she has 5900X money, she therefore has 7800X 3D money, and that would be my recommendation. If it's for anything else, then that's probably fine, although arguably the upgrade path and spending a tiny bit more on DR5 might be more beneficial, because then you can use that in future builds. But yeah, they're all decent. I mean, we're talking about, you know, a couple FPS or a couple % faster, you know, in various things. So realistically, it's fine. Random question, Andy, are you superstitious? I am not. Not at all. I'm a bit on the spectrum, so that might explain it. No worries, Joe. Hope your mum's all right, and enjoy the early car ride. That bit was ironic. But yeah, I think I will also leave it there. As always, if you have any want to follow up or continue chatting, the Discord's right there. Well, right there in the chat. Yeah, I hope you have a great week. Stay safe, have fun, and we'll see you all tomorrow for video, Monday for video, Thursday for stream. See you guys.